Hi, welcome to What's the Tea? Welcome back to this episode of What's the Tea? I'm Lasandra Hutchinson, and we were just informed that this is our 52nd episode. So we have been doing this for a year straight. We've never missed a week in a whole year. And so we just want to say thank you to our viewers, all of you that have supported this effort. This was an idea that was innovated throughout because of the pandemic. And so we just want to thank you for tuning in. We have a special episode and some special people here to discuss really honor mothers and talk about the role of mothers when it comes to our intimate partner relationships. And so we have an exciting tea. Grab your tea. Be sure to share this video. Grab your tea. Everyone, we're ready. We either have water, coffee, or tea here.
Right.
So go ahead and share this video. Feel free to share it and tune in. So, okay, we have a special panel. We're gonna have a little fun today. We're gonna get into some serious moments, but we're also gonna have some fun and actually have almost like a tone that's kind of reflective today, because it's really it's research based from doing this work, but it's also things that we've learned through experience. And so everyone that I have with me today was so gracious and decided that they were going to go ahead and participate in today's panel and share some of their experiences and their lived lessons learned, right? So if everyone would go ahead and just feel free to introduce yourselves.
I guess I'll go first. I'm waiting to see if someone is going to talk. I'm Jennifer. I'm the executive director, and don't mind me as I'm futzing trying to figure out how to share my video on Facebook. I would have it figured out by now. But.
And I'm Chris Scott. I am the development and communications director.
Celeste, we can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, you can't hear me?
Now we can.
Hear you now.
You can hear me now? So my name is Celeste Angulo. I am one of the community educators here at South Suburban Family Shelter.
Okay. So today we're gonna just kind of have a discussion. It's really a chat among us about just the role of moms when it comes to intimate partner violence. If you've been following What's the Tea, this topic has been alluded to in some way, shape, or form multiple times, especially when we talk about youth and we talk about protective factors, the role that parents play. Jennifer has spoken about this a lot in her episodes, just the role of parents when it comes to talking to children about violence, about safety, about boundaries. And so we wanted to unpack this particular topic a little bit more, and then specifically about mothers in particular and their role in honor, especially because Mother's Day just passed this past Sunday. So let me ask you guys, how was Mother's Day this year?
It was awesome.
Great. It was good. It was good.
Okay. What did you guys do?
So I didn't have to cook. So that's a plus. I didn't cook on Mother's Day. And another plus for me is that I celebrate Mother's Day on 2 separate days, because we have a Mother's Day here in America, and then we have Mother's Day in Mexico, which was yesterday. So I got double Mother's Day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I wanted to do was like not cook and clean on Mother's Day, and I got it.
Okay. I love it. I love it.
Well, I cooked. I hosted my mom and my sister, and we just had a great dinner, great dessert, and just kind of lounged around and talked, which was great because we all are vaccinated now. So this was our first time really like being able to enjoy each other.
Okay.
So it's awesome.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, we just kind of had a relaxed day. It was a joke, like all the couple months leading up to Mother's Day, whether they were going to do something or not do something. But I had requested a rain barrel, and I got it like immediately a couple months ago. So I was like, I don't really need anything.
Oh.
I just wanted a rain barrel, but they it was one of those things where I got up earlier than the rest of them. And then my husband was like, "You're going to go downstairs." And I was like, "Are you trying to tell me that I can't go?" And so apparently I have done this multiple times when they try to surprise me,
And
where
you,
I'm like
like,
about to go somewhere and they're like, "No, you may not leave."
Oh,
yeah.
So they set up like a couple of different cards and just teeny little gifts and different
oh,
around the downstairs.
That is sweet. I had a similar experience where I had to leave. So it was like the opposite so that they could surprise me and decorate the house. So it was like,
oh.
can you go somewhere and then we'll text you and you can come back. So yeah, the kids decorated the house and had gifts for me and all of that and music. We had a little party, balloons. So yeah, it was sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, so those were great. I'm glad everyone had a great Mother's Day. I've got one more. Let me ask you another question. This is like an icebreaker because we're just going to get into the momentum here of the conversation. Does anyone have a funny mom story? Because moms are pretty funny, actually. Like, we do funny stuff and we have funny mom memories.
Huh.
I'll go first, actually.
Okay.
Because I had one prepared. So my brother and I, we used to live across the street from a park, and we were being bullied one time by these two brothers. And so we came home and we're telling my mom, these kids are trying to bully us outside in the park. And, she kept telling us things to say, but it wasn't working. And so we kept coming back and saying, Mom, we're still being bullied. She says, okay. She comes out in the park, and my mom, comes up and approaches the kids and she said, are you guys bullying my kids? And the kids are so terrified. They're like, oh my goodness. And she's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out who is this out here bullying my kids? But my mom, she has a good humor about her. So it's like, she's, playing tough, but not really, and the kids are so scared. My brother and I thought this was so funny. She's like, look, I don't take anybody bullying my kids, but she's, it's in good fun, but the kids are so scared. My brother and I felt so defended and like stood up for that day. And it was just something we always reflected on. Like, remember when you came out and actually talked to the kids?
Yeah.
And they were terrified at the park, but that was a funny memory of her.
Well, I have a fun. Oh, sorry, Jenna, you want to go?
Go.
When you thought about that, I thought you meant a funny story about us as moms, but
Either one.
no, but that made me think of a memory with my mom that was always so funny to me. In elementary school, you know how you'd always look to see whose mom is coming to the door and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom was a stay-at-home mom until I was like in high school. And I remember in 5th grade, she had to come up to the school because I had gotten in trouble for just talking so much in class.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was one of those kids.
yeah, she surprised me. I didn't know that she was coming because it wasn't parent-teacher conference. So you know how when a parent comes to the door and everybody gets really quiet and like, oh, whose mother is that? And it was my mom. But what embarrassed me is that because she was at home, she didn't have like, I'm going to the school clothes or whatever. I remember she had on these rust-colored pants. It was like a pantsuit with black shoes, but she had the whitest socks that you could, I think you probably could have seen these socks from space, And I just remember, Mom, you couldn't have found black socks. And all the kids like, there's Chris's mom with the white socks. Yeah, look at her, So that was funny. I always remember that. And now she's like this fashionista that she wasn't when I was in elementary school.
Oh, wow.
That's hilarious. There's like a million stories probably about my mom because I spent a lot of time with my mom, but the only one coming to mind, we had a wooded area behind the subdivision that we lived in that we would walk in all the time. And I don't know, we were walking and there one day and there were wildflowers growing that she liked. And she literally had me help her pull them root ball and all, out of the ground because she wanted to replant them at home. And so then I have to walk by, and I was, middle school-ish. I had to walk home with her with these big giant plants and the dirt hanging off. And then like friends of mine are riding by on their bikes. And I was at that age where I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
people are seeing me
Oh my gosh.
carry these plants with this dirt hanging off all the way through the neighborhood.
Oh my
And the
god.
plants did not live at our house
Oh.
after she moved. Even still.
Oh.
And she would
Honestly, can't think of any.
she could.
Sandra, I actually can't think of a funny story right now, so we might have to.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's okay. Thank you guys for sharing those. So I wanted to do that because I felt like, moms have such an impact on our lives, and some people have good experiences, some people have difficult experiences or complicated experiences, but just the imprint and the memories, right, live so vividly in our minds of things that our mothers did or said, not just what happened, but how we felt about it in the moment. So I think that those memories share kind of really give an example of how serious that is. When it comes to a mother's influence in teaching their children about domestic violence or teen dating violence, what do you see as the impact, or what is the potential, do you think, of a mom and her teaching and her what she says about it with her children?
I can go ahead and start here. I don't know, like really, I can go in so many different directions, but I feel like the most important thing that a mom can do in teaching her children about dating is just set a good example and be a role model to them, because really, it really is just what you grow up seeing. The adults around you are who teach you what a relationship is like. So whatever it is that you saw, I remember, Lysandra, we were having a team meeting, and I thought it was so beautiful how you mentioned that you said you thought that all relationships were basically healthy. You thought everybody was good until you realize now that you're an adult that not all relationships are like that, because of the fact that you grew up and all the relationships around you were healthy. And that's really where it starts, is you watching your parents or whoever it is around you and the way they behave amongst each other. But also just communication. Moms can communicate with their children and let them know what the red flags are for a relationship and what a healthy relationship is like, and also what a healthy or a non-healthy relationship is like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good point. So modeling, it seems like it's like a huge part of it, like what they do, how they behave in their relationships makes a huge impact. Celeste is referring to, I said my mom and my stepdad were friends. That was how I viewed marriage, because I hear a lot when I got older, I heard a lot of there was so much focus on gender roles, right, as I became an adult, but I hadn't perceived that growing up. It just felt like these two people, they're buddies, that are laughing and joking all the time. And so I perceived marriage in that way, and I married someone that was my best friend, because in my mind it seemed like normalcy. It wasn't until I was an adult that I heard a lot of, women are doing this and men are doing that, and things felt more like they should be more rigid. But from my observation, I hadn't seen that. And I thought, okay, you're supposed to marry your friend, like marry your pal, marry somebody that you want to laugh with and joke with. And so I thought that was a good example, right? Because the playing field was pretty even between the two of them. Anybody else want to share? Like, what is the potential and the influence that a mother holds when it comes to teaching her children about intimate partner relationships or teen dating violence or domestic violence?
I think I can piggyback on what Celeste was saying, but for me, it's also being transparent. Even if you are a parent that did not experience a healthy relationship, when talking to your children, it's just like on the job training. People learn by examples, but they also learn with you being transparent, sharing your experiences. My girls are in their 30s now, but a few years ago, they told me, we never really talked about in detail what is a healthy relationship. where
Mhm.
dating was concerned, you
Mhm.
know, that I just said, oh, pick somebody nice, you know, and I would think about their families or anything. But when they were in those relationships, I never talked about, you know, how you should communicate together. You know, what are some of the do's and don'ts about your space, you know, or the signal when you know that something isn't right. And
Mhm.
so, you know, we had great conversations, and, you know, in their late 20s and things like that, and they discover different things about me and experiences that I've had that has helped them. But, you
Mhm.
know, sometimes moms, we do have to give ourselves a break, because I think back then my attitude was, I got to make sure they have this, you know, just providing support instead of thinking about the emotional preparedness that they need to be to have where relationships and things like that are concerned.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think that I also feel like what you're saying too is it's never too late. The
Right,
potential impact, yeah, it doesn't end just because your children are adults.
right,
You can
right.
still impact them greatly, even in, you know, later years in their 20s and beyond, I think.
Mm-hmm,
That's
mm-hmm,
great. That's
definitely.
wow. Jenny, did you want to share?
I think I would follow that line of the communication piece, you know, when you're thinking about the potential that you would have to impact is having open communication the norm, you know, within your relationship as much as possible, because you leave it open for them to come and talk to you. And that I think can be the most difficult thing once kids reach their teens, you know, they're trying to navigate independence so much
Yeah.
that they don't often want to go to the parent or the mom or, you know, the caregiver in their life
Mhm.
unless you've set it up that way where they always know that it can be open and you're always reinforcing that it can be an open communication
Mhm.
piece. That's hugely
Yeah,
important. There's
very.
so many. I always used to joke when I did dating violence presentations with adults, and I would ask, I've probably told you all this before, how many of you got the dating handbook when you started dating? And they would like, some of them would look around really confused,
Like,
like they missed out on something
right,
super
right,
important.
right.
They would say,
Like,
well, no, there's not one.
mm,
None of us got one. The young people in your life aren't going to
mm,
get one. So we're it, right? You know,
that's
and
so
Yeah,
true.
that's true. Yeah.
you have to have that communication and that openness, and you can model that with little things, you know, throughout life, so they truly learn if something big is going down, they can bring it to you and it will be okay for them
Yeah.
to share that.
Can you kind of talk more about that? How do we establish that normalcy of open communication? Or if Christine, Chris, or Celeste want to jump in, how do we make that the norm and establish that, even like you said, throughout those teen years?
Yeah, I think you have to find opportunities to start that conversation because they're probably not going to start it with you. So I think it's being intentional. We've talked a lot about consent, you know, finding ways to talk to kids about consent and
Mhm.
you starting that conversation with them. So, I mean, I remember my son talking about, you know, hugging kids at school or whatever. And I just would ask a question, you know, do you want to hug that person or does that person hug you? Or how do you know they want to hug you? And just like talking about it and helping them to identify, you
Yeah.
know, when somebody wants to and when somebody doesn't want to, and saying, what do you do if you don't want to hug somebody? You know, just being intentional about having the conversation around the natural things that happen. And then TV shows, I do a lot, which has gotten extremely annoying. But I do a lot of that, like, oh, did they want that person to
Mhm.
do that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So you're
Yeah.
looking for those opportunities. You're looking for those like teachable moments, right? To like
I'm
introduce.
always, and it's because of, you know, because I've always done prevention work with little kids, that I always I just notice it immediately. And I very often will pause the TV and be like, okay, let's talk about what just happened on this Disney Channel. You know?
Mom, we just want to watch the show.
Right.
Show that he watches called Jessie, and there's a recurring character called Creepy Connie, and Creepy Connie is a stalker.
Oh, wow.
And so we talk about it.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to hearing this because I'm like, I want to know. I think it's just something that you kind of just learn as you go. Because, you know, I have a 6 and a 3-year-old, and right now I feel like I'm doing an okay job, you know, communicating and make sure that we all have dinner together and make sure that we go to bed and have a conversation before they fall asleep before bedtime. But then when they're teenagers or where they get bigger, I have no idea what I'm going to do then. So
I'm with
it
you,
is something that
Celeste.
you
I
kind of
don't
learn as you go.
I don't know if any of it's gonna hold. Like, I hope that they don't hold.
Yeah. I think you just have to, like Jennifer said, take those opportunities, but also as the mom, be okay having an uncomfortable conversation. You know, you may want to ask questions that you may not, deep down inside, you don't want the answer to, you know, but you have to be intentional about having those conversations. I have a great relationship with my son, but it started when he was in high school. You know, I'm driving and I think I had heard something on the radio that said, have the talk with your kids, you know, keep a straight face. And they did that. So I chose to do this, and I hope he's not listening. I chose to do this when I'm driving him home from football practice. And it's like, you know, we're talking and I want to keep the communication open. So let me know, you know, if you're curious about, you know, the thing, having sex or whatever, you know, and he's in the back seat and I'm just driving and he's like, I think you're a little too late for that. And I froze. But I had to keep talking, you know, bring it out, what happened, you know what I mean? And that's a conversation. Did I want to have that with my son? No, but you have to keep the lines of communications open, and you as the mom have to be okay with being uncomfortable, sweating and your heart beating faster, but that's the way where it'll carry you through those years.
Yeah, that reminds me, Chris, of Celeste, when you and I were doing tea about that book, the Boys and Sex book, and there was part of it where I was reading, she was talking about the average age that boys are exposed to pornography. And it's pretty much like right around the age that my son is right now. And it was like, I was not prepared to have to start having that conversation. But what he brought up in that book over and over again is the boys and young men that she talked to often said that no adult in their life talk to them about relationships or sex or intimacy or what it meant to be romantic, you know, in a partnership. Like, no one ever talked to them about it at all. So that's why, like, everybody's saying communication, right? Communication.
Yeah. What's that book again, Jennifer? The name? Do you remember?
Let me look for it and then I will tell you.
Okay. So I'm hearing so many good things. One is that a mom initiates hard conversations. She's willing to have and to initiate those hard conversations. Moms look for those teachable moments where they can, whether it's through TV or a drive home in the car or just a normal conversation about something that happened throughout the day. And I hear what, like Celeste is saying, moms make the time, like they build in those pockets of time, dinner time, right before you're falling asleep, to have some type of moment where you can discuss and touch base. And also that moms are willing to just really be uncomfortable. You got to be willing to be uncomfortable. Gosh, we do a lot of hard work. Okay.
Right, so I have the full title again. So
okay.
The author is Peggy Orenstein, and it's called Boys and Sex, Young Men on Hookups, Love, Porn, Consent, and Navigating the New Masculinity.
Mm,
Wow.
wow. Wow.
And this is a follow-up. Apparently, she wrote one specifically about girls and sex
Mhm.
prior to this, so I haven't
Okay.
looked at that one yet, but it prompted the things that she heard during that book prompted her to do this one.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So this has been, I feel like we're learning a lot in the conversation. I know whoever's tuning in, you guys are getting some rich nuggets of wisdom, I think, and strategies for moms. Let's talk a little bit about then you guys personally, like, do you guys have, how did you learn, how did you navigate, what was your, you know, your lived experiences from your moms? Because I think we can learn, as Chris pointed out, from things our moms maybe have said, or things they didn't say, or things they did well, or things maybe they didn't do well. What was your experiences, or what have you either how did you come into like a good, healthy understanding of teen dating violence and domestic violence and all of that?
Well, that part wasn't from my mom. Understanding teen dating violence and domestic violence like that, I didn't know anything about that stuff, really.
So you learn later. You learn later in life.
Yeah. I think for me too, I learned later in life. My mom, like I said, she was a stay-at-home mom. And my model, like you, Lysandra, was what my parents showed me. You know what I mean? My father would come home, you could set your watch by the time. I knew that on Thursdays when the sale paper came out, we were all going to the grocery store. You know, there were just things that were what I thought was normal. And so when I started dating, I also, you know, because I grew up with my stepfather, who was a great man, but he wasn't, you know how some women will say, oh, I'm daddy's little girl or something like that. I didn't have that experience. He wasn't a horrible person, but his thing was, I am going to provide for you. I'm going to make sure that you accomplish things in life, you know, but he wasn't one that would kiss you or hug you or anything like that. So male relationships were also a mystery to me. You know what I mean? Because we didn't really have those conversations. They demonstrated love, but it wasn't what you would call maybe nurturing.
Yeah.
You know, my mother was a great nurturer, you know, but she had been married for a long time. And you know, I know we're going to talk later about gender norms, but they had this is what she was to do, this is what he was to do, you know, and things like that. So a lot of my experiences were learned, you know, later on.
Yeah.
And it was trial by error, you know.
Trial and error. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can relate with you, Christine, but for me, it was the opposite. I was a daddy's girl. My dad gave me hugs and kisses all the time. And my mom was more of the, you know, you guys are going to get your homework done and everything's going to get done.
Yeah.
Making sure that everything was in order. And so those conversations about dating, I didn't have with my mom until I was married. But for me, fortunately, I had a sister who's 5 years older than me. So she kind of played that role of a mom as well.
Yeah.
And I had all the conversations with her. Because of her, I am who I am, and because of my mom. But it's not just your mom in your life, it's also everyone else who plays that role.
That's true. That's true.
That's so important, Celeste, to bring that up, the other figures in your life that play those caretaking roles for so many people that don't have a traditional family set up, or a lot of people whose relationships with their moms, I think Lysandra, you said this in the beginning, right, aren't great or don't fit whatever that societal picture is, you know. Or a lot of us have had like a backup mom, you know, or another mom, or like, you know, you know, a best friend's mom that you think of that was, you know, so close to you. And if your mom wasn't somebody you could talk to, you had another person if you're lucky.
Right.
And then that's where I learned from is those conversations that I didn't have, I'm going to make sure that I have now with my children.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like it makes me think about that, the saying, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. And I think, you know, Jennifer, what you're saying, Celeste, your point, you know, our moms matter, and there are other people that mother us, who
Yes.
may not be our biological mom, but they're still mothering us, they're still nurturing us as well. So I think that's also, yeah, a great takeaway point, because you may be that person, you may be still mothering
Mhm.
somebody's kid, right? Somebody else's child, even though you may not be the biological mom, but you're really a significant player.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
awesome.
I've definitely told that to a couple of people where I've said, I don't know what your situation is like necessarily with your parents, but if you ever feel like you can't call them, please call me,
Mm,
you know.
Yeah.
that's so good. That's so
Yeah.
important. That's so important, I think, for us to be mindful of that too. Like, we may be the person for someone, and being willing to be that person. That's awesome. That's awesome. It also goes back to the discussion about the protective factors and having at least that one adult, right? That one
Mhm.
adult that you can have an intimate or close relationship with, that you can trust, that you know you can call if you have no one else.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like I was lucky that my mom was always, I mean, she was always there for me. You know, I don't
Yeah.
necessarily think that she taught me about dating or what to expect in relationships, but she was always my rock. I mean, I
Mhm.
could, you know, we could talk about anything and we were together all the time, you
Yeah.
know, up until like she's still grieving that, you know, to this day. But I grew up and I moved out of state and
Oh.
I'm in, you know, a different state now and we're not like super close to
Oh.
each other. But I think I've just always recognized that not everybody has that. And always wanting to make sure that people have someone
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
can go to and that they can talk to because it's special and it's important to be able to have that connection with someone and just to know that no matter what happens, even if it's a horrible thing and you've screwed up really bad,
Yeah.
you know, to have someone to go to. And that's something that I feel like I always want for young people. Like, even if you screw up, like you need help. You need to
Yes.
be supported through it. And I
Right.
want that for folks.
Right.
Yeah, I often too, and I tell my kids too, I said we often talk about people being an adult at 18, but so many young adults between 18 and 25 still need so much support and guidance.
Yeah.
I think in the culture, we're kind of pushing like, oh, by the time you're 18, you should have it life figured out some kind of way. And it's like, no.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I think when I think about the things that I was doing 18 and 19 and think about my kids, it's like, no way. I made it out by the seat of my pants.
Right?
Okay.
Right? I
So
think
no.
that's my fear. I'm like, oh gosh, I hope my kid makes better choices.
Right.
Yeah. I
Sometimes I
always,
feel like I'm like, I can spot some things. I'm gonna be like, all right, I know that.
yeah. Well, and I always try to tell them too, even after you go to college, you're 18, you can come home. Home is
Yes.
here. I'm here. You don't have to
Yes.
figure it all out. You're still growing up. You still need support. You still
Yeah.
need coaching. You still need your parents or someone to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think like you, Chris, you know, it's talking about it. So even, you know, things like, you know, Sebastian's learning about smoking and smoking is bad for you or whatever, and being
Mhm.
honest, being saying, well, I used to smoke, and he's like, oh, you know, this is why, this is what it was like, and asking questions, learning about alcohol, and he wants to know like, why is it so bad, and what does
Yeah.
it do to you, and just having, well, this is what it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that tactic of just being honest. They'll learn from your experiences.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I was
Definitely.
gonna make that point too. My mom, I told the education team this story. She would tell me stories about her life. There would always be stories, and I try to model that too. It could be random. I could just say, I was thinking about today. I was thinking about when I was about 10.
Yeah.
Like, where is it coming from with the randomness? And
Yeah.
now I've done it so much. You're like, we know that story. We remember. But anything that I can think of where I learned a lesson, I'll try to share it. Again, just trying to capitalize on the moments, and
Right.
maximize the moments we have. But my mom used to tell me the story. She said she was waiting tables when she was about 16, and she had a woman who was kind of like a play mom, but was like a big sister to her. And she told her, this guy that comes in here that you wait the table for, stay away from him. He's bad news. And my mom, she told me like that she was so hard-headed. She didn't want to listen. And she's like, no, I like this guy. He likes me too. And the guy was trying to buy her all the stuff and buying her shoes, buying her clothes. And she was like, oh yeah, he's doing this for me. He's doing that for me. And she said, but one time in the restaurant, she was maybe waiting on some other person in the restaurant, and she was laughing, and she was like, they were cracking jokes, and the guy got jealous, and he started telling her, who are you over there laughing with? Don't do that. Where are the shoes I bought you? Where's the coat I bought you? Where's the purse I bought you? No, I came to pick you up from work. Why were you out here? And so she explained to me how she thought like, oh my God, I got to get rid of this guy. They were right. I got to break up with the guy. So maybe at that time, I'm probably like 13 or 14 when she would tell me this story, and she didn't call it teen dating violence, and she didn't call it power control. And I didn't know any of these terminologies, but I was learning the red flags. I was like, people shouldn't be controlling you. I just learned, like, I just had it in my heart at that point, like, people shouldn't be trying to control you that are dating, that you're dating, or whoever shouldn't be trying to. So I think that sometimes just the fact that she shared this story, even though she didn't have all the verbiage, I feel like she may not have known exactly. She just knew that's not healthy. And I think that that's another thing too, just telling our story to our kids. Here's my story. Here's how I learned stuff. I was being hard-headed. I messed up. Maybe this was the wrong choice, but I learned how to make a better choice. I definitely learned from her in that example. So in talking about the gender norms, I think, Chris, you brought this up. Like I said, I oh my goodness, I had ended up getting a lot of hardcore teaching about gender norms when I grew up and I started going to a particular church. The mindset of the people, was very, way back when.
Yes.
Women stay home, women work and clean, and men go out. And it was just so anybody wanted to deviate from that was frowned upon in that community. And this was when I was getting married. So I felt all this pressure, to play these roles. And I didn't know, I can still be a good mom and not, follow this. But at the time, I was young, I'm like 20 or so, 21. And so, this really impacted me. But doing this work in domestic violence, when you think about gender roles, how they're either modeled or what we're expected to do, this is highly connected to people's experience with domestic violence and their personal agency. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? What you've seen and learned through either doing this work or personally?
I can talk about personally, and I can relate it to my kids. When they were coming up, I was intentional because I had 2 girls and a boy, and he was like the boy sandwich, he was the middle person. And of course the girls loved him so much. I remember one time he was going on a date and my oldest daughter didn't like his shirt. She's like, take it off, I'm gonna iron it for you. And I'm like, no, you let him iron it himself. And then I thought about it. I was like, okay, he's going to be going off to college soon. So we would make assignments, okay, Brandon, this is your night to cook dinner, and things like that. Because I wanted him to not sort of emulate what was happening, in our family or what he thought was on television, what was the right way to do, that girls can do this. And, this isn't just restricted to men. And I wanted to be really intentional about that because as he went to college, he did appreciate that because there were guys who, would use girls to fix them dinner or sew this or whatever. And he appreciated that he knew how to do that himself. And I think also it built, it reinforced that respect, for women and girls, you know what I mean? To not think that, oh, they're only, good for this or whatever. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that we addressed in our family. I was very intentional about, you are going to know how to do everything. It's not the woman's job to do this and all that. And he's carried that through,
Yeah, That's good. Absolutely. Absolutely. What were your experiences, Celeste or Jennifer? What have you seen in terms of the impact of how we understand gender roles? How does that impact our intimate partner relationships in
So
general?
I grew up in a household where it was basically, I mean, because my parents came from Mexico. I don't know if that's the reason why or not, but my culture is just strictly, women cook and stay home and don't work, and then the men go to work and come home. Like my dad literally came home and my mom would help him take his boots off, and dinner would be served on the table, and he wasn't expected to even pick up his dish and put it in the dirty dish.
Right.
So that's what I grew up around.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice that I didn't even like doing things like that until maybe I was like 13 years old, where I started noticing like, no, I don't like doing this. This isn't how it should be. For my parents, I think it was fine because it's something that they mutually agreed on.
Mhm.
So, whatever it is that floats your boat, but it didn't float mine.
Yeah.
So now that I'm married and have my husband, I'm just like you are with your kids, Christine. I make sure that my 6-year-old does the dishes, and they can't leave the table. Even my 3 or 6-year-old can't leave the table without picking up their dishes.
Mhm.
And I just make sure that it's not the same as it was when I grew up. That's what I learned from that.
So I have to think about when I grew up, because it's always difficult for me to remember
Yeah.
all the kind of details there. My dad cooked a lot. He was more, I think, of the chef of the family, and he gardened a lot. I have 2 older brothers, and my oldest brother has Down syndrome, which I'm not sure if we've talked about on T before, but he required a lot more additional care. So even though I was the youngest, I sometimes feel like I somehow fell within the middle, because developmentally, growing up, he really was the youngest on the developmental kind of a scale. But my parents divorced when I was about 13. And so then it was just my mom and I, and we did a little bit of everything. And I was somehow a little feminist without knowing it when I was growing up, because I remember there was one man that she dated that was not, he was very sort of set in the ways of gender roles. And I remember that I clashed with him all the time. And I went off on him one day because I was ironing something, and he made some sort of comment about me ironing, and I went off on him. And he said something to my mom, and she's like, well, you've said what you said, So yeah, my husband is the one who does all the laundry, and a little bit too often, like every day. And, he does the dishes a lot, to the point during the pandemic where it's like, I'll try to help with the dishes, and he's like, get out of my dishwasher.
Yeah. Wow.
Like, no, it's my dishwasher too. Why are we fighting over who gets to put the dishes in the dish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just is like, I don't know. It happens, So, I mean, my son sees us each doing, there's some things that I cook. There's some things that I cook more often, but he has certain things that he does. So
Mhm.
I'm learning, I think, Celeste, kind of what you're saying, like what floats your boat, right?
Yeah.
What works for different couples, who
Mhm.
likes to do what, who can do. Because I like to cook
Exactly.
sometimes. Like, it takes my mind off of everything, and
Mhm.
it's fulfilling to make something that tastes really good, and to hear other people tell you that you did something that
Yeah.
tastes good.
Yeah, I think that this is so important because we learn, we may learn from home, what we saw modeled, but then when we grow up, we get different messages as well. And this can impact us too in how we experience our relationships, our adult relationships. I know for me, like I said, I looked at marriage growing up as, okay, 2 friends are going to get married and you're working as a team. But then when I came into this church, it was like, no, that's all wrong. The man's supposed to do this and the woman's supposed to do that. And so then I was trying to fit that mold, and it didn't work for me and my husband. It didn't work at all, because the foundation of our relationship was like teamwork. And so when we tried this you do all this stuff and I do all that stuff, we were, bumping heads because we didn't fit. It was like, we don't fit this. And so like,
Mhm.
to Jennifer's point, learning that it really is whoever does it best, or whatever you agree, whatever works for you is really the answer. And I remember being so frustrated during that, as a young mom, like in my 20s, feeling like, what is the right way? Like, why won't anyone tell me the right thing to do? But it really is, even when somebody say, we do what works for you, I thought, what does that mean? Like, what is it? But that really is, it is like doing what works for you. And I think coming into domestic violence work, learning about how in some communities, if the expectation is almost like for this power imbalance is to be the norm, you can potentially think that some things are okay that aren't okay,
Mhm.
or potentially be in a more vulnerable position, even economically, right? Because you thought, okay, I got to come in and I got to stay home and I quit my job, but then not realizing that if your partner potentially becomes abusive and is trying to have power and control, now you are in a vulnerable place.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because at this point, I'm 38 and I have every intention to tell all my kids, have your own money.
You know what? As you were talking, Lysandra, that was like the one thing that I did. I was like, you know what? We're going to have separate bank accounts. And we actually have a shared account where like we save some money together and like we take money in and out of it to pay certain
Yeah,
bills. That's
yeah,
where the money sort
Yeah.
of commingles in order
yeah.
to take care of our financial obligations. But then we each have our own separate credit cards and our own separate checking accounts, and we can make our choices because that, it's always the impact of domestic violence work. I remember really clearly doing 40-hour training and teaching about safety planning. And I've always just had this like, if we're telling people how to safety plan, I should know how to safety plan. Like,
Mm,
like what
so
is the,
good.
like if I had to do what I'm telling other people that they need to be prepared to do, how would I do it? And I used to have people in 40-hour training start to fill out a safety plan. And they're like, wait, what? And I was like, well, this is what happens when somebody calls the hotline. All
Wow.
of a sudden, you're asking them all these questions, and they're potentially going from the hotline call, leaving their house and their family and everything they have.
Wow.
Yeah.
What would you do? How would you do it?
Yeah.
Do you even know all of these things? And you never want to think that it's ever going to happen.
Yeah.
But none of the people that we work with ever thought that it would.
Right.
Oh, and
Yeah.
I love what you're saying because I feel the same way. I feel like I'm never gonna say to my sons or my daughters, be dependent, be fully dependent. And that doesn't mean you don't love this person and that you don't
Right.
hope for the best, but you just can't. It's just not wise. Even if it's not domestic violence, there's so many reasons why it's not wise, right?
Yeah.
But you want to have your own personal agency and your own money and your own ability, right, to access funds
Mhm.
to be able to provide for yourself. And so I think, given how I was raised, but then what I saw in the church and then doing this work, it's changed me. It's changed what I've taught, what I would say. And that's not even like, oh, maybe you should. I feel like I'm training them. No, absolutely. Like you're saying, Jennifer.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have, my son has some of his money, and when he wants to buy something, he'll be like, can I take my wallet? And, so he's practicing, like, we might give him a limit still, but he can pick something out. And we were, was Girl Scout cookie time, whatever, and we're buying Girl Scout cookies, and he decided he was going to buy his own box of Girl Scout cookies, so they would
Yeah.
like be his box of Girl Scout cookies. So he bought a box of Thin Mints. He
Mm-hmm.
has not finished that box of Thin Mints. You all know that my husband and I have finished our box of Thin Mints a very long time ago, and this box of Thin Mints is sitting there, and it's got my son's name on it, and We can't eat them
Yeah. Wow.
because he bought them with his
With
own
his
money to
Yes.
have his, but
You know,
his agency, his ability to say,
right.
this is mine.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about when you were talking about safety planning, Jen, it reminded me about even where teenagers, when they start dating, you have to teach them about a
Yes.
safety plan for
Yeah.
dates.
Mhm.
And I
Yes, I've done
remember,
that.
yeah, my mom used to call it mad money, you know. So
Mhm.
if something happens on the date, you have enough money to get yourself home and things like that. And I think that's something that we have to continue to teach our young people when they do start dating, you know, have a plan if something goes left, you know, because they seem like a nice person, but then when you get out there in public, it's like, oh my God, you're a monster. Let me get home. You know,
Yeah,
have a
I
plan.
forgot about that. I used
Yeah.
to do that in groups that I ran, back
Mhm.
when I was a prevention educator. That was part of our groups. I can't remember the name of it, but it was essentially, a safety plan for dating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I tell my kids too, have your own, when you're out, they don't, they're not at the age yet where they're out, hanging out with friends yet, but, like on their own, but I'm trying to prepare them. So like when you are old enough to be out with friends, you should have some money with you. You should have your own cash. You shouldn't say, oh, so-and-so's going to buy my,
Yes, right.
have your own bag.
Yeah.
If you can, you drive, yourself, or have me take you, or have, a way to get where you need to be. Don't be at the mercy, right? At the
Right.
mercy of other people that you're hanging out with, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't
Right.
know. You need to be prepared.
Mhm.
So I think having those conversations is really important in preparing them, and not to be so hyper vigilant that they're paranoid,
Right.
thinking the worst, but
Yeah.
that they're sober minded, that they're
Yeah.
ready for
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the chat, but let me ask you guys this question in general. Just how can moms, just in a straightforward way, just how can moms, and I think we've kind of hit on it. How can you talk to your kids about what is normal, right? How do you normalize and prepare them so that they are not vulnerable, not extremely vulnerable to intimate partner violence, or domestic violence? And I think we've said it here, like having your own money, like you just said, having mad money. Any other suggestions or thoughts about that?
I think also, when you have these conversations, especially where dating is concerned, tone of voice, give them, what's the tone of voice we use in the home? If our tone of voice, we always talk to each other with respect and things like that. When you're out on a date or with other people, do you think that's acceptable? Is that the type of environment that you want to be in? Your personal space. That and it's telling boys and girls, you are entitled to your personal space. One thing I do remember with my kids, it's like, culturally we all like, oh, go hug uncle. What? No, you don't have to do that if you don't feel comfortable with that, because you're entitled to your personal space.
Yeah.
Don't make them feel like because of who this person is in the family, that you have to go and let them put their hands on you or anything like that. So it's like having those conversations about what makes you feel respected and loved, and have that carry on when you're outside the house.
Yeah, Jennifer, I know you've mentioned that quite a few times on T as
Mhm.
well, about personal space.
Yeah, I mean, helping young people discover who they are, right? And how
Yeah.
they want to be treated and what's okay with them. And I would probably even say, in that idea of vulnerability, abuse can happen to anyone, and there's quite a few people, that our counselors and advocates will talk to, who will say, I never saw anything like this in my family. I was never exposed to this before. My parents raised me, some of the ways that we're talking about, and how did this happen to me? It's not, the
Yeah.
person who's harming them that's the person who's doing the harm. And sometimes we can do whatever we think is the best, but we don't ultimately have control
Yeah.
over what happens when they get in relationships. So I probably then fall right back to that communication
Yeah.
and that openness piece, and always in whatever way that we can try to make sure that they know. And sometimes they still choose not to, but that's the hard thing about being a parent is, what did somebody say? It's like, walking around with your heart just like out there,
Yeah. Yeah.
no protection at all
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Oh my God.
I definitely agree with Jennifer, like just helping them find themselves, because as we've discussed, everybody's different, every relationship is different. And I say this a lot in my prevention work as well, just setting your own boundaries. What your boundaries are not the same as somebody else's. Everyone is different. So it's really important to just find yourself. And then also going back to my prevention work and what I do with my children, and what I think just needs to be done more is you can start off when they're young and just talk about feelings. Because a lot of the time, children are taught that it's not okay to feel sad and it's not okay to feel a certain way. So then when they do go into these dating relationships and they feel some type of vulnerability, some type of feeling that they aren't too familiar with, or they never taught was okay to feel, they express it in a different way. And I think this can lead to abuse when they feel sad and they say, well, I'm not supposed to feel sad, I'm supposed to feel angry right now. And so then that's kind of what can actually lead to abuse. And something that moms can do is talk to their children about all the different feelings and make sure they know that it's okay to feel every single one of them.
That's a great point. That's such a great point. That just giving them the permission to know how they can experience the full range of emotions. I think for me, one of the things that was difficult, and I told my mom this recently, I said, you raised me to be so nice. There was so much emphasis on being nice, but I felt guilty to be authoritative.
Right.
I said, I didn't see myself as like an authority. I said, well, when you're dealing with men,
Yeah.
society, even in this age, right? I have to wipe every smile off my face at some point. My tone of voice has to become very authoritative. Okay, I am done with that, right? No mistake about it. And I was not taught that was okay. I had to learn, like, look, that doesn't make you mean or bad, or all these societal things that women are supposed to be so sweet, be so nice, don't ruffle any feathers, don't check someone that needs to be checked, right? You know what I mean? Like, you need to know, check whoever you got to check, do what you got to say, what needs to be said. You're an authority over you. I didn't get that part. I had to learn that part through trial and error. Also, just this point about gut and intuition. I feel like sometimes we're not taught about like just the instinct. You don't know why you feel like something about this is weird. You know what? That's okay. Just leave. Like, trust it. Trust.
Right.
Yeah.
Trust it.
Yeah. I feel sometimes that we don't. I try to teach my kids that you have an inherent like instinct and an intuition that is there to keep you safe, and you may not understand it because it may bypass the brain, but lean on it, trust it. Even if I say, if you go to someone's house and you're like, I don't know, something doesn't seem right, call me, call me.
Yeah, that's important. I was not raised to be nice.
Okay. I needed a little bit of what you had to rub off on.
I have many, many modeling examples of my mom telling people about themselves. That wasn't a problem. I think this is the opposite problem. I had to learn how to maybe show that a little bit.
That's good. I mean, we need the balance, I think, of knowing. We need like these these tools in the shed, to know when to pick up what's supposed to go now. And to know that. And I think it goes back to Celeste's point that we are free to experience the full range of emotions and to do whatever we got to do in the moment. So Rachel, are there any questions in the chat for us?
We actually have two. I will start with this one. You guys did already kind of touch upon it already, where we were talking about how mothers are not the only mother figures. And this is kind of just like a personal question for each of you. Do any of you have experiences with mother figures that influenced your understanding of healthy relationships?
Mm.
I touched a little bit on this when I was talking about my sister. My sister was like a second mom to me. So definitely I had so many conversations with her. When I first started dating, she's the one that I told. So she made a big impact in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Also in my culture, we take like being godparents extremely seriously. And I had a godmother as well who was always there for me. Could always talk to her about anything. And now I'm a godmother of my sister's 3 girls. So I'm making sure that I'm doing the same with them.
Oh, wow.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really, I mean, I had other women in my life who were actually my mom's friends who I had become close to, but I think over the years, my mom and I have gotten, so close, that she is. I mean, we talk to each other all the time, 2 or 3 times a day. So I was grateful for that. But I did have extensions of her, and she always had that one friend that, if she was like the person, if you wanted the secret to get out, tell her so she can tell your mom so you don't have to tell her,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one of my best friends when I was growing up. I was very, very close to his mom. My best friend when I was little was a boy, and I was very, very close to his mom, Karen. She was like a second mom to me. And we kind of, grew apart as we moved away and stuff. But, we bought each other presents and stuff.
Yeah.
Like we,
Yeah. That's
I
awesome.
loved her so much. I could have just hung out there with her without her son being around. So I had a couple of people whose parents were just really kind. And the one of the ladies that I babysat for her kids for years. And we just had a really nice relationship. So it was nice to have that. But I don't know that I would. Not the same. I don't think the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rachel, what was the second question?
The other question is the last question, and it is, if you can remember, what is your favorite lesson that you've received from your own mom and one that you'll pass on to your kids because it stayed with you forever?
Oh, fun. Just like having fun. Not that I think that she ever said that, but my mom was definitely the mom that would blare the music all over the house and sing and dance when you had to clean, like that kind of stuff. And just like random silly kind of stuff. And we still do that.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I think for me, she always talks about be true to yourself. If it's something that you don't like or that you want to do it, and I think even though there were some things that she didn't accomplish or do in her life, even now she's still, like that. It's like, if I say something and I'm thinking about it, she's like, just do it. Why? She always says that, people always say, what is it, when you're dead, you're gone, or something like that. She was like, no, but you live every day. She said, live every day and just be true to yourself. If it's something you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the main things that I've learned so much from my mom, especially now that I have kids, now we have such a strong relationship because now I can relate with her a whole lot more. But what she's always seen really valuable is family. She always tries her hardest to keep the whole family together because there's 5 of us. And we're all grown up now. So she does everything she can to keep us together. She'll invite us over for family dinner. And I just think that's really important.
Yeah. Love that.
My mom was very, she became very like civically engaged in like her 20s, 30s. And so she would talk to me a lot about the underdog. You know, I think that's what brings me to this kind of work. It was her little conversations with me was like about how tax resources were allocated. And you know, she would volunteer on campaigns, and you know, I would be in like the campaign office for Harold Washington and you know, Tony Preckwinkle, right? And she was learning about it herself at the time, but she became so passionate, it just planted all these little seeds. And I think that I often talk to my kids about that too. There's communities that are marginalized and oppressed, and just this feeling of like you should have a sense of social responsibility to do something about that, to make life better for people. And that comes from her, right? So I'm proud of that. Mom, I'm sure she's watching this. Hello. Give you your flowers today. But yeah, this was great. I'm sure people have a lot to take away from this, a lot to learn from watching this episode. So thank you to all of you for sharing so transparently. Yeah. Any
Thank
last
you.
words? Yeah. Any last words? Last thoughts?
I think I have a last thought. I'm trying to figure out how to put it into words, but you know, just to kind of relate what we're talking about to domestic violence, I hear us talking a lot about, you know, all the good things that moms do.
Yeah.
But I feel like for those who are maybe in a violent relationship or whatever kind of difficulties a mom may be having, they might feel some type of regret because they're like, well, I didn't have this communication with my kids. You know, I was busy worrying about keeping them fed or keeping them sheltered. And so I feel like we're kind of making it seem like it's easy. It's definitely not easy. No matter what, there's always all these things you have to focus on before you focus on communicating. But like we mentioned, it's never too late.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. And I think too, like it makes me think about some people we've had on the team. Angela, who spoke about her experiences, and I remember her saying she wasn't able to really enjoy the kids when she was experiencing, and she'd been going through domestic violence. But afterwards, it seems as though she was able to redeem the time. She was like, now I'm really engaging with my kids and enjoying my kids, and you know. I think that's a great point too. Just that it's not too late. And even if it's not due to DV, just working life, right? It's not too late to apply new knowledge and to use the time you have with your children, even if as Chris expressed, even if they're gone, even if they're 18 and older, it's not too late.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, it's easy for us to get on here and, you know, we're obviously giving examples of all the things that have gone right. So I usually have a follow-up episode of all the things that didn't go right.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
Nobody's perfect, but to your point, Celeste, you know, I've shared very often that I grew up with domestic violence, and one of the things that kind of triggers me when people talk about working with folks with domestic violence is there does seem to be this sort of like inherent assumption that a person who's experiencing domestic violence can't be a good parent, and that actually makes me feel a little angry and upset because I loved how my mom parented me. You know, she parented all of us differently, and you know, my brothers might have a different opinion, but I experienced her as a very strong parent. And you know, everyone has their abilities, you know, within that, and just because something is very difficult is going on in someone's life doesn't in any way mean that they can't be a strong parent. And I think that's such an important message because our society really shames parents who are experiencing domestic violence. And I just don't think there's a lot of truth to that.
That's such a powerful point. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. That's a great point to make. I'm glad let's leave off at that. That's an awesome point. So Rachel, thank you for doing tech. Be sure to join us next week. Same time, same place, different tea. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.